Lesson, we're looking at animal architecture. We're going to look at animal symmetry, animal segmentation, and animal systems. Body symmetry. All animals have their own particular body plan. A body plan is an animal's shape, symmetry, and internal organization. An animal's body plan results from a pattern of development programmed into the animal's genes by natural selection. The word symmetry means correspondence in size, shape, and relative position of parts on opposite sides of a dividing line, or a median plane, or about a center or an axis. All that means is that symmetry is the way the parts of one side of an animal or an object correspond to the parts on the other side. The kinds of symmetry found in animals are radial, bilateral, and sometimes asymmetric. There are also animals with no symmetry, or called, again, asymmetrical. There's also spherical symmetry. In spherical symmetry, everything is the same in all directions, as it is in the surface of a sphere, but it's rare, so we won't look at it in the animal kingdom. The simplest body plan belongs to sponges. Sponges have no symmetry. They are asymmetrical or irregular in shape, and often their shape depends on where they are growing. Look at the different shapes of the sponges in the pictures below. Anyway, other than sponges, the body plans of virtually all other animals show a definite body shape or symmetry. Let's look at radial symmetry. Think about a bagel or a pizza. Both of these have radial symmetry. Animals with radial symmetry have body parts arranged around a central axis, somewhat like spokes around a bicycle wheel. Some of the first animals to evolve the ancient oceans have radial symmetry. A plane passing through the central axis divides the organism roughly into equal halves. These pictures show that both of the anemone and a flower pot have radial symmetry. Note that if you cut them into the top half and bottom half, they would not be identical halves. It is the plane through the central axis that divides it, not necessarily a plane anywhere. And you can see above, the picture above, it doesn't matter where the plane is placed, each of the planes passing through the central axis divides the animal into roughly identical pieces. This will include animals like the sea anemone, floating animals like jellies, and slow-moving animals like sea stars. Bilateral symmetry. Now think about a pair of glasses. These exhibit bilateral symmetry, in which there are distinct right and left halves. Take a look at the cute pictures below. The beetle may not be so cute, but the puppy is kind of cute, and the frog is definitely cute. If you take the living thing in any of the pictures above and divide them vertically in the middle, the left and right halves of the image will roughly mirror the reflections of each other. Let's look at this short video. You can see the divisions here. Even though the snail looks like it might be radial, it's not when you look at its antenna and its eyes. Here's a jellyfish. It's definitely radial. Bilateral symmetry continued. The bodies of all terrestrial, land, and flying animals, as well as aquatic animals, show bilateral symmetry. In bilateral symmetry, a plane passing through the animal's midline divides the animal into mirror image halves. There is a dorsal top half, a ventral bottom half surface, as well as an anterior front and a posterior back. Bilateral symmetry was a major evolutionary change in animals because it enabled different parts of the body to become specialized in different ways. For example, most bilaterally symmetrical animals have evolved an anterior towards the head concentration of sensory structures and nerves, a process called cephalization. Just think of where your major sensory organs are: eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. They're in your head. Animals with cephalic ends are often active and mobile. Concentration of nervous tissue and sense organs in a head bestows obvious advantages to the animal moving through its environment head first, since their sensory organs are concentrated in the front. Such animals can more easily sense food and danger. Let's look at internal body cavities called segmentation. All bilaterally symmetrical animals have one of three basic kinds of internal body parts. That means if you were to cut the bilateral symmetrical animal right through the belly, you would find one of the three basic structures to the right. These internal body plans are called acoelomate, coelomate, and pseudocoelomate. And here's the acoelomate in the flatworm. And you can see the cross section. Coelomate, like the worm, earthworm. You can see the cross section here. And the nematode, which is a pseudocoelomate, you can see that cross section here. Humans are bilaterally symmetrical, so we have one of these body plans. Of course, we are not exactly tube-shaped, so our body is arranged a bit differently, but we have the same basic structure as other bilaterally symmetrical animals. Look at the words above these pictures here: acoelomate, coelomate, pseudo. Acoelomate means not, so acoelomate means it doesn't have a coelom. Pseudo means false, so it's kind of not got complete coelomate. So all you have to do is figure out just exactly what a coelomate is, and you're all set. Well, a coelomate is an animal that has a true coelom. What's a coelom? A coelom is simply a fluid-filled space between the body wall and digestive tract. So a coelomate is an animal with a true coelom, a true fluid-filled space between the body wall and the digestive tract that is completely surrounded by tissue. From mesoderm, picture on the previous page, notice the mesoderm is in direct contact with the endoderm, which is yellow. So mesoderm, okay, and endoderm, direct contact. A mesoderm is in the middle. Meso means middle. You have ecto on the outside and endo on the inside. The zygote, or the fertilized egg, develops into a hollow ball of cells called a blastula. The blastula eventually develops into three separate layers. Each layer continues to develop into specific tissues and organs of the body. The layers called ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. Ecto means outer, endo means inner, meso means middle. The ectoderm develops into the epidermis. The endoderm becomes digestive. Mesoderm becomes muscle, skeleton, circulatory system. If you think about where these tissues and organs are located, it makes sense. The endo is on the outside, and it develops in the outer layer of the skin, sweat glands, and nervous system. The mesoderm is in the middle, developed parts between the skin and the inner organs. The development of the coelom is critical, and its location between the endoderm and the mesoderm is critical. It allows inner organs to develop in a protected cavity.
It's in my car.
Coelom. A coelom provides a tube within a tube arrangement that allows for greater body flexibility that is possible in animals lacking an internal body cavity. It also provides lubricated space where the inner organs are suspended, which protects them from movement of the surrounding muscles and tissues. You've probably already figured out that the more complex an animal is, the more likely it is to have a coelomate body plan. A fluid-filled coelom also serves as a hydrostatic skeleton in some animals, especially worms, aiding in the movement and burrowing. Now, don't get confused. The coelom is not the inside of the organs. It does not refer to the inside of the stomach or the inside of the intestines. That is the gut. The coelom is the cavity that the stomach and intestines sit in, and it is fluid-filled. Acoelomate. Some animals are acoelomates. They have no coelom, no fluid-filled body cavity. In an acoelomate, the space between the skin and the gut is completely filled with tissues. Not many species are coelomates. You can see some of the examples below. Flatworm, medusa, coral, jellyfish. Pseudocoelomates, other animals, have a body cavity located between the mesoderm and the endoderm. Since that body cavity separates the endoderm and the mesoderm, it does not allow the same protection that the coelomates have. So it's called a pseudocoelom. You can also see some examples here. Roundworm, rotifer, Body segmentation. Segmented animals are composed of a series of repeating similar units called segments. Segmentation is present in all advanced animals and is easy to observe in some animals, like earthworms, but difficult to observe in others, like spiders and moths, and only visible in the embryo in some animals, such as mammals. In segmented worms, such as the earthworm, to the right, each segment can move independently, permitting great flexibility and mobility. Therefore, a segmented worm's long body can move in ways that are quite complex. The earthworm can lengthen some parts of its body while shortening others. Let's look at that. And here is a picture or a representation of that, elongating some segments and shortening others. Okay. Body systems of animals. Animal bodies consist of cellular components, the organelles and other things inside cells, the tissues that are derived from 3 embryonic germ layers, ecto, meso, and endo, and some extracellular outside the cell components. Together, all the components of the animal carry out the functions necessary for life. Simple animals, such as sponges, carry out many tasks of living with very little specialization in the cells of their bodies. More complex animals have evolved tissues and organs that are specialized to perform specific functions. 6 important life functions of these tissues are digestion, respiration, circulation, conduction of nerve impulses, support, and excretion. Although it's not necessary for the survival of an individual, reproduction is necessary for the survival of a species. So we will conclude that here. Digestion. Check gastrovascular cavity, a digestive cavity with only one opening. Food and waste go in and some opening of the same opening. Example is a hydra. Digestive tract or gut has 2 openings, a mouth and an anus. Food and waste go in and different openings. 1 opening, 2 openings. Respiration, uptake of the oxygen and release of carbon dioxide. Lungs, air enters mouth and through branches of the lungs. Examples are mammals. Gills, very thin projections of tissue that are rich in blood vessels. Examples, fish. Circulation. Purpose of circulatory is to move gases through the body. Open circulatory system, a heart pumps fluid containing oxygen and nutrients through a series of vessels out in the body cavity. Example is arthropods. Closed circulatory system, a heart pumps blood through a system of blood vessels. Example is chordates. Nerves. Nerve cells are neurons. Examples are grasshopper. Nerve net, area of coordination among nerve cells. Example, hydra. Ganglia, clusters of neurons. Example, planaria. Support. Hydrostatic skeleton, water that's contained under pressure in a closed cavity. Example, hydra. Exoskeleton, rigid external skeleton that encases the body of an animal, like a crab. An endoskeleton composed of a hard material embedded within an animal. Example, humans. Excretion, removal of waste products. Carbon dioxide removed by lungs. Nitrogenous waste or ammonia soluble in water, so aquatic animals can release easily. In land animals, it's converted to acids that can be eliminated. Undigested food is released as feces. Reproduction. Asexual reproduction can be done by binary fission, breaking into lower level one-celled animals usually do this. Budding is a bump outgrowth of a smaller organism. Regeneration is a piece of body regrows entire organism like a starfish. Parthenogenesis is a new individual develops from an unfertilized egg, and that does happen in the animal world. Sexual reproduction. Hermaphrodites, both testes and ovaries in the same organism. They exchange sex cells with others. This is an example of earthworm. External fertilization. The egg is fertilized outside the female's body usually in water habitats like fish and frogs. In turtle fertilization, the egg is fertilized inside the female body. Example, mammals and birds. Let's look at a summary of the body structures. You can see at the bottom here, ancestral proteins. Then we go to no true tissues like sponges, true tissues with everything else. Radial symmetry with cnidarians, bilateral symmetry with everything else. Protozomes with mollusks, worms, and arthropods. Deuterozomes with echinoderms and chordates. So that's why echinoderms are studied right before chordates. Here's another structure that will help you with classification. It's a cladogram of living vertebrates. Key breakthroughs are indicated on the branch. So you have backbone with vertebrate. That would be most of these organisms. Jaws, or two sets of paired limbs. Lungs, legs, waterproof egg, milk, and feathers. And at the top you can see the different types. Osseoukes, or bony fish, tetrapods, and reptiles. Here's a coelom summary with different ways that these show coeloms. You can see acoelomites, pseudocoelomites, protozomes, and deuterozomes. And this chart will recur throughout the lessons, and I would suggest keeping it handy. It goes through each phylum of invertebrates, and then it does the body support and movement, the nervous control, the reproduction, digestion, circulation, excretion, and gas exchange. The end.